Ever since I can remember, I've been watching ski and snowboard videos. As a kid, it was the passionate yet light-hearted Warren Miller ski movies. As a teen, it became the more hardcore and countercultural punk snowboard videos. As a young adult, the genre got uber serious. Then it lightened up to the point that we were eventually making skits with riders in a comedic theme that defined the movies. In the past decade, snowboarding progression has gone intergalactic in both freestyle and freeriding. And now, with the quality of video cameras also skyrocketing in every direction, we have the most outrageous technology making its way into even the deepest backcountry, and riding entertainment has become worthy to be called a film. But since this culture began, there has always been a common thread underlying the passion and productions that support this lifestyle, and that is the why of it all. This question of why has not changed and doesn't appear that it ever will. It is still the highest and deepest question pertaining to the significant philosophy of the hardcore rider. Why do you do it? Why is it so great? Time and time again, the best snow riders in the world get a camera pointed at their face, and they do their best to dig deep and summon up the most wise-sounding and pithy explanation of something that is apparently so profoundly exhilarating and experiential. Put simply, it could be defined as fun, excitement, joy, something that brings happiness. But time and time again, there appears to be more than just that. This fun and happiness has become a way of life that has taken priority over everything else in many cases. And this level of dedication and passion brings with it some concerning things like pride and justification. And so that pride grows, and as does the justification, and that tends to create a philosophy. The philosophy of the hardcore snow rider. The philosophy of the hardcore snow rider isn't all that different from many life philosophies. For example, themes like live for the moment, seize the day, no regrets, and the things you own end up owning you, all reflect the annals of general freedom. The definition of freedom is the condition of being free from restraints. So the freedom of riding down the mountain ultimately represents a joyous physical act that involves focusing from moment to moment and leaving all of the varied restraints of life behind. But the philosophy of the committed rider has always involved more than just enjoying a time of physical, mental, and emotional release of mountain riding freedom. It has become, for lack of a better term, something quote-unquote spiritual. But what does that mean exactly? Well, the definition of spiritual is 1. Of, relating to, consisting of, or having the nature of spirit, not tangible or material. 2. Of, concerned with, or affecting the soul. 3. Of, from, or relating to God, deific. So now there is an existential element to the experience of sliding down a mountain. But does that experience involve the consciousness of another spirit? Does it take another spirit to affect our spirit? Or is our spirit simply affected by experiences with inanimate objects? This raises questions about these profoundly, quote, spiritual implications. Is the mountain conscious? Does it have a spirit? That theme appears arguably in the highest quality ski films from the Canadian producers Sherpa's Cinema. The mountains speak to us, they say, or you must listen to the mountains. But the mountains are just rocks covered in frozen H2O. Why would they have a spirit that would communicate with us? Or the same goes for what some call Mother Earth. Are we supposed to love the natural earth with a spiritual intent? Is it alive in some spiritual way that fulfills our spirit? Or is it just an extension of the inanimate rocks that form the mountains while carrying a wide variety of separate and individualized life that are connected in a complex symbiotic relationship? The 1991 classic Burton snowboard video, Scream of Consciousness, was an early example of this existential thread addressing the philosophy of the hardcore snow rider. In fact, this title was even repeated by AdventureScope in 2007. Consciousness is defined as 1. The state or condition of being conscious. 2. A sense of one's personal or collective identity, including the attitudes, beliefs, and sensitivities held by or considered characteristic of an individual or group. And it gives the appropriate example that love of freedom runs deep in the national consciousness. And number 3, special awareness or sensitivity, class consciousness, race consciousness. I think awareness and personality are good attributes of consciousness. Let's look at some more snowboard video titles over the past couple of decades. In 1996, AdventureScope put out a notable video called Exit. Exit was a symbolic reference to rebelling from the conservative mainstream mentality, or consciousness, that calls for financial security and the typical 9-to-5 work life that as the compass to happiness. The message was something mysterious and freeing, as it encouraged one to sacrifice what the general populace would consider the highest priority in life. I know it certainly was inspiring for me. I mean, here were all of these top professionals, some of which I later came to know personally, giving us the wisdom of their life philosophies, which had obviously worked perfectly for them. Another big theme in the philosophy of the action sports enthusiast has been the search. Another AdventureScope video was simply called Quest. The definition of quest is the act or an instance of seeking or pursuing something, a search. Though this can refer to the ongoing search for more waves or powder, I believe the underlying implication is about this existential searching for something more, spiritually. Deep down, I think we all know that the ultimate meaning of life is something more than meets the eye. In fact, Rip Curl, the Australian surf snow designer manufacturer, whom I was once sponsored by, still uses the search as their theme after 2 decades. Or how about one of the leading snowboard filmmakers, Absinthe Films, who has titled some of their films such names as Transcendence, Now Here, and even After Forever. Now, we understand the philosophy of being here and now, even though the process of riding for and making a snowboard video involves tons of foreplanning for the future, as well as a looking back at the past to the point of even selling the past in the final product, which makes the whole concept full of hypocrisy. But the title Transcendence invokes thoughts of something more than just transcending to the next level of physical snowboarding. The definition of transcendence is 1. The act of surpassing unusual limits. 2. The state of being beyond the range of normal perception. And 3. The state of being free from the constraints of the material world, as in the case of a deity. And I'm sure you can catch my drift when we find a snowboard video called After Forever. Once again, these are existential concepts and pursuits. Even the best all-around snowboarder on the planet, Travis Rice, titled his own freestyle freeride competition Supernatural. There's a very obvious pushing for the superlative meaning of something that is relatively simple, snowboarding. If snowboarding is defined as descending a snow-covered mountain while standing sideways on a snowboard, then why is there all of this mystique as to the why of it all? 2016 is not missing these questions with such videos as Different Directions is Gold for the Soul and Transworld's Insight, where each rider is given the platform to expound on his personal philosophy of snowboarding, which ultimately boils down to the same general reasons most people love to snowboard. But because of this innate subconscious desire for something more in the metaphysical realm, we continue to see the same ideas over and over again and again. All the while, the pro who has the means to follow his search full time appears to have all the answers, while those who are striving for that elusive freedom are left to search the great wisdom of those who have proven to understand, quote unquote, what it's all about. Recently I watched a snowboard video called White Noise that features one of the best all-round big mountain snowboarders of all time, Xavier Delarue. I've met Delarue. We even hiked and rode one of my favorite backcountry peaks while being filmed from a helicopter. And so White Noise is a stereotypical snowboard video that integrates the philosophy of the main subject. While traveling the world and snowboarding awe-inspiring big mountain lines, Xavier expounds on the importance of snowboarding in his life. And ultimately, the entire video culminates to an ending close-up of his straight face and him saying, "Snowboarding is my reason to live." How idolatrous is that? Your reason to live is to enjoy riding down mountains. This mentality is addressed when the great book says, quote, "Some will be lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God." In fact, it goes on to strictly admonish us to avoid such people. I speak from direct experience in this snowboard culture and life philosophy. For much of my life I was chasing the dream with all my heart, mind, soul, and strength. I dug deep into the worldly wisdom and guidance of those who had what I wanted, and I committed myself to my pursuit of what is also commonly referred to as trying to find yourself. On the inside, I didn't feel like the guy who worked for a living. I felt like the guy who was a professional recreator. In fact, I was doing things that many who were living the dream could not do, so I had all the justification in the world to feel confident that I deserved to graduate to that next level in life, to transcend into some sort of secularly blessed life of good fortune and opportunity to live in the moment as though evolving into a proper, higher consciousness. I made my exit and sold out of my multi-generational livelihood and my commitment to follow my heart and follow my dreams. After all, I had sponsors. I did decently in certain international professional snowboarding competitions. I had one of the biggest cliff jumps ever caught on film. I hung out with successful professionals. I was close friends with a crew whom I could make internationally distributed snowboard movies with. And I even had something no other snowboarder had ever had before, a personal flying machine on skis to use for snowboarding. But personally, my pursuit of my dreams and the world's superlative concept of following your heart in an honest search for ultimate happiness and meaning led me into bankruptcy and left me with jaded dreams and friends who had lost their lives in this pursuit. I had accomplished a fair amount in snowboarding, but no matter how hard I tried, it never could become what I wanted. I used to look at the world of action sports and I simply could not accept that with my skill set, that I couldn't find my place and be supported by it all somehow. I worked with the top freestyle motocross movie maker in the world, as well as one of the top freestyle snowmobile movie makers. I traveled the West Coast all the way to Mexico and back to Alaska seeking my lot in action sports life. Fortunately for me, there was a reason nothing worked in my desperate pursuits. Like many people, I had the belief that there was a higher power in life that could not be seen. I had a fairly symbolic outlook on life that recognized that many things don't happen by accident, which has really come to light now. I also grew in a real appreciation of the blessings of nature and the beauty in the world. And for some reason that I can't even explain, I began giving thanks to that higher power consciously throughout my day and even at night before bed. I had sacrificed financial freedom for physical freedom, and I had come to value understanding and truth and truly functional knowledge and wisdom. I began praying for those things to the general God that I felt was out there somewhere. And there's a reason we all have this deep desire for something more, something greater and higher in power. We are filled with a spiritual passion that is only served by its outpouring into what is spiritually and supernaturally true. And that which is spiritual is, by necessity, something that is conscious. A conscious mind that drives a spirit that actually interacts and has the capacity to fulfill another lesser spirit. The search is not something that is meant to be unattainable. Though it is something that is meant to be ongoing, it is meant to be fulfilling by actually being grasped beyond a fleeting moment of time that only leads to another temporary fulfillment in another brief moment. The secular idea of the spiritual search is something that will always be found on the ground floor and limited by its own ceiling. There is a necessity for an intimate or infinite supernatural spirit to fulfill that deep existential longing, and that spirit has a mind or consciousness that can not only communicate but can provide in all the necessary ways of true spiritual fulfillment. Such a spiritual source would have to be far greater than our own spirit. It would have to be integrally tied to all the positive elements of the world before us. It would have to be right in the core of its very being. It would have to have a character and personality that perpetuates what is ideally proper. This spiritual source would, in essence, have to be at the heart of objective reality and truth. In fact, it would have to be the source or creator of all reality and truth. These are the things that we long for. These are the truths that are often overlooked or escape our understanding even in our best effort. And that is because in order to recognize these spiritual realities, we have to reach a point where we can understand that it cannot all just come from within ourselves or from some abstract, unknowable force in the universe. It comes from a character who has a system, and that character is able to illuminate our spiritual understanding only when we can be truly objective and hear that truth and embrace that truth by appropriating the system that spiritual power is set in place because he knows what is true and right, and we do not. In fact, we are prone to not know what is ultimately true and right because of the error of our nature, the world around us, and a popular opinion that can easily skew our recognition of what's right. The God who created the world with all its amazing beauty and adventure is the same God who created you. He created your heart, mind, soul, spirit, and strength, and he has a particular will for all of those elements of you. And his will is for us to search for him with all of those faculties so that he can help us grow into true fulfillment and peace. So that is our quest for true freedom, and that it can be actually realized in an infinitely perpetual way while we continue to grow in understanding within that ongoing freedom. That is why the Bible says that Jesus Christ, Yeshua Messiah, is the way, the truth, and the life, and that no one comes to the Father of all things good but by him, and that you must be born again in order to see the kingdom of heaven. That is true regarding the afterlife or after forever, where we will really find our true selves, and that is true regarding also the ability to see the kingdom of heaven that is currently functioning in the spiritual here and now in this world. May God bless you with the real pot of gold for the soul that is at the end of the rainbow of God's authority and will for our lives.